Welcome to a deep dive into a story that's captivated humanity for millennia.
The book of Exodus.
Yeah, we're going beyond just the plagues and parting seas.
Right.
We're going to uncover why this text, why it matters.
Yeah, why it still resonates with people across cultures and beliefs.
Totally. It's a story that I think grapples with some pretty universal themes.
Deliverance, faith, and, always this challenge of how do you build a just society?
It's about, like, that deep longing for something better.
Yeah.
That yearning for liberation, which feels, I don't know about you, but it feels pretty relevant even today.
Oh, absolutely.
But before we get ahead of ourselves,
Okay.
let's set the stage.
Yeah, let's do it.
Can you take us back to the beginning? Who are the Israelites? How did they end up in this whole Egyptian slavery thing?
So the Israelites, they actually migrated to Egypt generations earlier,
Okay.
about 400 years before the events of Exodus.
Wow. 400 years. That's like,
Imagine that, right? 400 years, they went from being welcome guests
oh, wow.
to basically an entire population,
Yeah.
born into forced labor.
Wow.
As the political landscape shifted, you know how it goes.
It always does.
This wasn't like a temporary hardship. It was
Yeah.
generations. It was their reality.
Generations born into that system. It's hard to fathom what that must have done to, like, their sense of hope, their very notion of what was possible.
Absolutely. Just the idea of freedom, of a different life would have been almost unimaginable.
And that's where, this is where Moses enters the picture, but he
Oh.
wasn't like some born revolutionary, right?
No, not at all. He was raised in the lap of luxury
Okay.
in the Egyptian royal court. He was a prince by adoption.
Okay, talk about a privileged upbringing. Hardly the resume you'd expect for a liberator of the people. So what changed?
Well, things took a rather dramatic turn, shall we say, when Moses killed an Egyptian slave master
Oh, wow.
and was forced to flee for his life.
Right.
He ends up living as a shepherd
Okay.
in the wilderness
Mhm.
for, get this, 40 years.
40 years. Wow, that puts into perspective how much life can change. Like, in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
To go from a prince to a fugitive, it makes you wonder if he ever looked back and was just like, how?
Right. How did I get here?
Yeah. How did I end up on such an unexpected path?
And it's out there, tending sheep, that he has this encounter that will change everything.
Okay.
The burning bush.
Okay, so we've all seen the depictions, whether it's in, movies or whatever.
Right.
A bush engulfed in flames, but not consumed.
Right.
But what's the deeper significance of this event? What's actually happening here?
It's the moment Moses comes face to face with the divine. The voice from the burning bush identifies himself as Yahweh.
Yahweh, a name that, that echoes through history. What's the significance of that name? What does it tell us about the nature of this being that Moses encountered?
So in Hebrew, it's connected to the phrase, I am, WHO, I am.
Wow.
Not one God among many, but like existence itself. A power beyond, I think, beyond really our comprehension.
Yeah.
And that's crucial to, I think, understanding this whole Exodus story. This isn't just Moses versus Pharaoh.
Right.
This is a clash between, like, ultimate power and earthly authority.
And yet, even face to face with this, like, ultimate power, with the burning bush as his, like, pep talk, Moses hesitates.
Right.
Who am I to do this? It's a question that I think resonates with our own, human experience, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We doubt, we question our own worthiness, even when we're presented with these incredible opportunities.
It's that relatable human element, I think, that makes this ancient story so compelling. Like, we see ourselves in Moses's doubt, and maybe that's the first lesson of Exodus. Sometimes the most daunting challenges, the calls to greatness, are also the moments we most clearly see our own, like perceived limitations.
Yeah.
Like we put those limitations on ourselves.
Totally. It's interesting how this encounter with the divine, this moment of doubt and affirmation completely changes, like, the whole trajectory of his life, right? Yeah.
He goes from questioning his worthiness to, like, confronting Pharaoh himself.
And let's not forget, this wasn't just any ruler.
Right.
Pharaoh was considered a god, right? A living god.
Oh, wow.
The embodiment of Egyptian power and authority.
Talk about a daunting task. So Moses is, like, standing before Pharaoh.
Right.
And he delivers that, that iconic line, let my people go.
Let my people go.
But spoiler alert, Pharaoh's not exactly, on board.
On board with the freedom plan.
Yeah.
No.
And that's where things, I guess, escalate.
Yeah, that's where we get the plagues, the 10
The
plagues.
10 plagues.
And these weren't just about like inflicting suffering, you know.
Right.
Remember what we said about Yahweh?
I am WHO. I am. I am, exactly. The plagues were like a systematic dismantling of the Egyptian, I don't know, worldview,
Yeah.
their entire system. Each one targeted a specific
Right.
Egyptian god or goddess.
For example, the Nile turning to blood.
Yes.
Like, it wasn't just like a health hazard, it was a direct attack on like the god happy.
Right. The source of the Nile's fertility and abundance.
Right, like all the things the Nile represented to them.
Like, exactly. And then, I mean, you have the plague of frogs,
Right.
the goddess Hecate, also a fertility deity,
Okay.
was depicted with a frog's head.
Wow.
So imagine, you see these creatures
It's like,
that are symbols of life and prosperity transformed into this, like, horrifying infestation.
it's like the Egyptians are being forced to confront the limits of their own gods,
Yeah.
of their own belief system. But it wasn't just like their deities, right? It's not just this esoteric, like theological debate.
Right.
This is having like real world impact
Absolutely.
on their daily lives.
Like, take the plague of darkness, right?
Okay.
It wasn't just your average blackout.
Yeah.
This was a challenge to Ra,
Ra, the sun god.
the sun god, exactly.
Yeah.
One of their most revered deities.
Yeah, like the Egyptians, I mean, they depended on the cycles of the sun.
Exactly. They were on that solar calendar just like everybody else. And suddenly, boom, for 3 days, they're plunged into this impenetrable darkness.
It's almost like unfathomable to
Uh-huh.
imagine that terror, that disorientation. And, it makes you think, like, when those familiar rhythms of life are disrupted, it can really shake even our deepest beliefs.
Absolutely. Our assumptions about the world.
Yeah. But of course, like, I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't, The most, I think, devastating plague
Right.
was the death of the firstborn.
Right.
What message do you think that sent, especially to Pharaoh, who considered himself a god?
It was a crushing blow.
Yeah.
Both personally, obviously, but also symbolically.
Right.
Pharaoh's power was meant to protect his people,
Right. Especially his own son.
especially son, of course. This plague, I think, really demonstrated that his authority, his so-called divinity, had limits.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a powerful reminder that even in the face of like what seems like insurmountable power, there are these forces beyond our control.
Absolutely.
But amidst all of this, right, amidst the plagues, the confrontations,
Right.
there's this like intimate moment of preparation for the Israelites.
Yes. Passover.
It's more than just a holiday, isn't it?
Much more. It's a ritual, a tradition that I think really lies at the heart of this whole story.
Mhm.
God instructs the Israelites to sacrifice a lamb
Okay.
and to mark their doorposts with its blood.
And it's this act of faith, this like very visceral ritual that allows the angel of death to pass over their homes
Right, right.
during that final plague, sparing their firstborn sons. But it's also, I think, like a foreshadowing
Oh, yeah.
of another sacrifice, one that resonates, especially deeply within like Christian tradition.
Precisely. The Passover lamb prefigures Jesus,
Right.
the Lamb of God,
Uh-huh.
who, according to Christian belief, would ultimately sacrifice himself
Yeah.
for the sins of humanity.
It's amazing how this story continues to like resonate, across different faiths and cultures. But let's get back to like the Exodus itself.
Okay.
The Israelites are spared. Pharaoh finally relents, or at least he appears to.
He gets to that point.
He gets to that point.
Yeah.
And they make a run for it.
Right.
Which brings us to another, iconic scene, the parting of the Red Sea.
Yeah, it's one of the, I think, like the most visually stunning
Right.
and theologically resonant images
Absolutely.
in the entire text.
Yeah.
It's really a testament to the power of faith,
Right.
even in the face of, what seems like insurmountable obstacles.
Yeah, and they're caught. Talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place. They are literally caught between an army and the sea. Their newfound freedom hanging by a thread.
Right, exactly.
And then in this, this moment of like divine intervention, the waters part, offering them this like, miraculous escape route.
It's an incredible image of deliverance.
Mhm.
But it's important to remember, the terror
Right.
and the uncertainty
Yeah.
that the Israelites must have felt. They'd just taken this huge leap of faith.
Yeah, this step into the unknown.
Right. And even with the sea parting before them, they were still being pursued by, the might of the Egyptian army.
Yeah. It's like, it makes you wonder, even in those moments, did they truly believe that they were going to make it out alive? Or were they just running on like pure adrenaline
Right.
and like desperate hope?
I mean, those are questions that have resonated with readers and
Yeah.
believers from millennia, right?
Yeah.
But I think what's important to remember is that they kept moving forward.
Right.
They didn't let fear just like paralyze them. They trusted in something larger than themselves.
Yeah.
Even when the path ahead it seemed impossible.
And that's a powerful message, isn't it? To keep moving forward, even when we can't see the entire path.
Right.
Trusting that we're being, guided, supported, even in like the most uncertain of times.
It's a message that's, I think, especially relevant in our world where, I mean, let's face it, uncertainty and change seem to be the only constants.
Right.
But let's not forget, right?
Okay.
The parting of the Red Sea, that wasn't the end of their journey.
Right.
That was just the beginning of a whole new set of challenges.
Right. Like that dramatic escape, it was just the beginning. It kind of makes you think about like the weight of expectations.
Right.
They've gone from captivity to this like miraculous liberation.
Right.
And now they're facing the wilderness.
Yeah.
Not exactly a 5-star resort.
It's the ultimate test, I think, of their newfound freedom. Because remember, for generations, their lives were defined by the harsh realities of slavery.
Right.
The lack of agency,
Yeah.
the constant struggle for survival, and suddenly, boom,
It's like choices.
they have choices to make, a future to define for themselves.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, that sounds, on the one hand, exhilarating,
Sure.
but also completely overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about a recipe for second guessing.
Absolutely.
And that's precisely what happens, right?
Yeah. They start longing for the good old days of Egypt.
Right.
Conveniently forgetting, of course, the brutality.
Things weren't so bad.
Yeah. The backbreaking labor.
Right.
It's like this classic case of like romanticizing the past, especially I think when we're confronted with the uncertainties of the present.
It makes you wonder if it's like hardwired into us, right?
Yeah.
To focus on what we lack rather than appreciate how far we've come.
Totally. Like, it's definitely a very relatable human flaw.
Oh, absolutely.
But I mean, even in their complaining, right? Even in their doubts, there's this constant reminder that like they're not alone.
Right.
The story of manna from heaven, right?
Yes.
The quail appearing out of nowhere, the water flowing from the rock. It's all about provision.
Right.
About support that appears in, I think, like the most unexpected ways.
And that's a powerful message too, right? That even when we feel lost or confused, even ready to give up on this whole journey,
Totally.
there's this force larger than ourselves looking out for us, guiding us towards something meaningful.
But it requires trust.
Oh, absolutely.
A willingness to believe even when, we can't see the whole path laid out in front of us.
Exactly. And that trust is tested yet again.
Oh, yeah.
When they arrive at Mount Sinai.
Cue the dramatic music.
Right.
Like, it's the quintessential image of, like, divine revelation.
Oh, yeah.
Thunder, lightning, the earth trembling as, like, God descends upon the mountaintop.
Yeah. It's all there.
And it's there amidst this, like, awe-inspiring display.
Right.
That Moses receives the Ten Commandments.
Which, often are seen as just like the set of rules, right?
Right, this divine code of conduct.
But if we look closer, we see they're structured in a very specific way.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for us.
The first few commandments, right, they deal with our relationship with the divine.
Okay.
No other gods, no idols, honoring the Sabbath. These are about recognizing a power greater than ourselves.
Right.
Establishing this, like, foundation of reverence and respect.
So it's about like setting those ground rules.
Yes.
Defining our place in like the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. But then, and I think this is key, the commandments, they shift focus.
Okay.
The latter half. They deal with our relationships with each other.
Okay.
You shall not murder. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. These aren't just about, personal piety. These are the building blocks of a just and ethical society.
It's like, yeah, the foundation for a functioning community.
Exactly.
The recognition that, like, our actions, they have consequences.
Yeah.
Not just for ourselves, but for those around us.
Precisely. And that's what makes, I think, Exodus so relevant, even thousands of years later.
Right.
It's not just a story of people escaping slavery, right?
Yeah.
It's a blueprint. It's a blueprint for how we build a better world.
Yeah.
A world based on these principles of justice and compassion
Yeah.
and mutual responsibility.
It's a reminder that true freedom isn't just about, like, escaping external constraints.
Right.
It's about the choices that we make, the responsibilities that we embrace, and the legacy, I think, that we leave behind.
And that's a journey, I think, that, in a sense, we're all on, right? We all face our own personal Egypt,
Yeah.
our own moments of doubt and uncertainty. But the story of Exodus, it reminds us that even in the wilderness, even when the path ahead seems unclear,
Yeah.
we have the capacity for growth, for transformation,
Yeah.
for building something extraordinary.
It's a message of hope. It's a message of resilience.
Hmm.
And ultimately, I think it's a message about the enduring power of the human spirit
Yes,
to overcome even the most daunting challenges.
absolutely.
So as we kind of, wrap up our deep dive into Exodus, maybe we're left with this question. What personal burning bushes are we ignoring in our own lives?
Mhm.
What opportunities for growth, for change are kind of flickering before us,
Right.
waiting for us to say, yes, I will answer that call?